Between First and Second World War, Europe wasn't a calm place. Already in 1917, Tsarist Russia broke up and civil war started on its territory. It was fought by many sides, especially by individual nations seeking independence, for example the Poles, Estonians, or Ukrainians. Then there was also the White Army, which tried to restore Tsarist Russia to its original borders, and the Bolsheviks with their Red Army, who wanted to spread the communist revolution to Europe and to the rest of the world. The growing influence of the Bolsheviks and their violation of treaties, when they expanded by force even into territories which they had recognized as independent, caused fears of invasion in the newly formed Polish Republic. On the other side were the desires of many of Polish political and military elites to restore the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. In January 1919, the Red Army occupied Vilnius and established a new socialist republic there under Bolshevik control. The Soviets then demanded diplomatic negotiations with Poland on disputed issues, but there was little trust on the Polish side that the Soviet side would respect anything. In February 1919, Polish troops marched to face the Red Army and secure the Eastern Territories in accordance with the idea of restoring the state within the borders of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Several minor military clashes took place, especially on the territory of Belorussia. The Soviet expansion to the west was thus halted for the first time. Poland at that time successfully ended the fighting against the West Ukrainian Republic with which it was fighting over ethnically mixed territories around the city of Lvov. Reinforced by the troops that could return from the fighting against Ukraine, the Polish army went to Vilnius, which it captured in April 1919. Polish commander Pilsudski wanted to use as a basis for the creation of the Polish-Lithuanian Federation. The Soviets attempted a counterattack to regain control of Vilnius, but were pushed back and in May decided to withdraw after an intensification of fighting with the White Army in other parts of the front. In June 1919, tensions between Poland and the German Republic were also growing, and a large part of the Polish army was on the western border. Active fighting in the Polish-Soviet War therefore subsided for a short time. After the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, the border between Poland and Germany was stabilized, and by the end of June Polish forces could move east again. At that time, the Soviets succeeded in pushing back the Ukrainian troops and gradually occupying Ukraine. Eventually there were also clashes between Polish and Soviet troops again. In August, the Poles succeeded in capturing another important city, Minsk in Belarus. From August to October, the Polish army managed to advance further into the territory of Lithuania and Belarus. The Red Army made several attempts to stop them, but they were not successful. But this unstoppable Polish advance was an illusion. In fact, most of the Bolshevik forces were concentrated on fighting the White Army and securing control of Russian territory. In the summer of 1919, the White Army began to thrive again and even marched on Moscow. The West wanted Poland to support the efforts of the White Army led by Denikin, but the Polish commander Pilsudski opposed this and viewed the Whites as a greater threat than the Bolsheviks. The Polish troops therefore reduced their combat activity, and the military capacity of the Bolsheviks was released to fight the Tsarists. In December 1919, the Red Army succeeded in pushing the White Army out of Kiev. The Polish leadership greatly underestimated the Bolsheviks and thought they could easily defeat them and create a strong Poland united with Lithuania and a large buffer zone in the form of a free Ukraine. The Bolsheviks created false attempts at diplomatic negotiations, but used the time during the diplomatic negotiations to move supplies and troops to prepare for a strong offensive against Poland. By early 1920, both sides were preparing for continued fighting. Within Poland, war exhaustion grew and national conflicts emerged. In particular, the Ukrainian population in eastern Poland was unhappy, as this area was often heavily charged with confiscating Ukrainian supplies and property for the use of the Polish army. Nevertheless, tens of thousands of Ukrainians joined the Polish troops after the promise of liberation of Ukraine, which at that time was under the control of the Bolsheviks. By April, both sides of the conflict were ready for continued war. Poland launched an advance on Kiev in an attempt to create a Ukrainian state under Polish control and have the territory between Poland and Russia secured. After minor clashes, the Soviets withdrew to better positions across the Dnieper River and the Polish army entered Bolshevik-abandoned Kiev. But in May the Soviets launched a prepared offensive on the northern war front in Belarus, where only a smaller part of the Polish forces were present, as most of the troops and equipment had been allocated to secure Ukrainian territory. The Red Army advanced about 100 kilometers on the weakened Polish northern line in a short time. The Poles sent some forces from the Ukraine to help and regained the lost territories. During May and June, the Soviets began to attack around Kiev, and the Polish army was eventually forced to retreat from the area to western Ukraine to secure its logistics. In July it became fully evident how well the Bolsheviks had actually prepared itself during the fake peace negotiations. The Red Army began to advance very rapidly along the whole front towards the Polish mainland. Only now did the Polish command understand how wrong they had been and that it was no longer a question of what borders Poland would have, but if Poland would exist at all. By the beginning of August, the Soviet army was already only 100 kilometers from Warsaw. This made the Polish population feel very threatened, and a large number of volunteers began to join their army. As the battlefront moved inside Poland, supply routes were shortened and simplified. With the rapid advance of the front, on the opposite, the logistics of the Red Army were becoming worse. The Soviets, on Stalin's orders, tried to advance in two directions at once, inside to Poland to Warsaw and westward into Lvov. The Soviets were excited by their recent successes and so decided not to combine their military forces around Lvov and Warsaw and instead attack both places simultaneously in August 1920. The Red Army attempted to encircle and cut off Warsaw, but to succeed would require crossing the Vistula River. The Polish troops managed to prevent the Bolsheviks from crossing the river. The Soviets began attacking Warsaw from the eastern direction only, and eventually they were the ones who were surrounded by Polish troops. After fierce fighting, the smaller Polish army managed to split the Soviet armies and successfully push them back. The communications and logistics of the Red Army broke down and of the four Soviet armies in the area, two completely collapsed. Many Russian soldiers were captured or fled. The Polish forces advanced further east and recaptured the lost territories. The Red Army attempted counterattacks, but without success. Everyone was exhausted from the fighting, and the war ended with the signing of the Riga Peace Treaty in 1921. This treaty drew new borders and their mutual recognition between Poland and the Soviet Union. It also included the recognition of Bolshevik rule over Belarus and Ukraine and the arrest of Ukrainian volunteers of the Polish army. The Soviet Union had to forget about any military action and the violent spread of communism across Europe for several years. This treaty was broken at the beginning of World War II when the Soviet Union and Germany divided up Polish territory.